Tonight, Donald Trump doubles down on his plan to take over Gaza.
In order to fix a place like that, people are going to have to live somewhere else.
The policy still unclear. Now, an Israeli minister suggests some Palestinians could be relocated to Canada. New questions about the deadly mid-air collision over D.C. Why was a security system in the military helicopter turned off?
There was no compelling national security reason for ADS-B to be turned off.
And now Elon Musk is vowing to fix air traffic control. Dubious discounts at Old Navy.
Is a deal really a deal if it's on all the time?
So it's not really a sale.
A CBC Marketplace investigation finds sales that aren't what they seem.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. Donald Trump is not backing down on his proposal for a U.S. takeover of Gaza and the removal of the Palestinian people. And while most of the rest of the world is rejecting the proposal, Israel is running with it. Its defense minister is ordering the Israeli military to prepare plans to open corridors for Palestinians to leave Gaza voluntarily, he insists. Temporarily, insists Washington. While Trump suggested the U.S. would take control after the fighting was over and the Palestinians were already gone. As Paul Hunter explains, it's a destination widely rejected by the region with no clear road to getting there and with Palestinians firmly standing in the way.
At this camp for displaced Palestinians in southern Gaza, misery now mixes with defiance. The idea of displacement is very difficult, he says. We have nothing but our land. This is our land. We can't leave it. That to U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal to relocate Gaza's roughly 2 million Palestinians to some other country, like it or not, allowing it to be redeveloped as a so-called place for the people of the world. Even from the ruins of war-ravaged Gaza, the view on that is steadfast. God says this is our land, she says. We will stay on it. Before attending the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, Trump reiterated his proposal, rejected by so many in the Arab world and beyond, posting on his Truth Social platform, the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of the fighting, he wrote. The Palestinians resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities in the region, adding, no soldiers by the U.S. would be needed. From Israel on using its military, the country's defense minister, Israel Katz. I've instructed the Israeli Defense Force to prepare a plan, he said, that will allow any resident of Gaza who wishes to leave to do so to any country willing to receive them. Adding in a post on social media, countries like Canada, he wrote, which has a structured immigration program, have previously expressed willingness to take in residents from Gaza. Ottawa does have a program to take in Gazans with family connections in Canada, but it's capped at 5,000. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continued his visit with U.S. lawmakers. The shouted question from a reporter, does he think United States troops are needed in Gaza to make Trump's plan feasible? His one-word answer,
no.
And Adrienne, I just highlight one other comment from a displaced Palestinian our videographer met with, who just shook his head and said he doesn't even understand why Trump wants to do this.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue, isn't it? The nuts and bolts of it, the plan in detail. Is there anything more on that?
No. I mean, there are those who liken it all to ethnic cleansing and strongly oppose it simply on that basis. But the details of what the plan actually is are vague. The broad strokes are clear, relocation somewhere, likely for years, and some kind of reinvention of the place, but that's basically it. The White House has been asked for more detail, but points simply at Trump's initial statement on this Tuesday night.
Okay, and Paul, hang tight, because we're going to come back to you in a moment, because there's a lot more going on in Washington this night, including that the Trump administration plans to keep less than 300 staff at the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, a dramatic evisceration of one of the world's largest aid organizations. The rest of the more than 10,000 people working at USAID will be put on leave and, if overseas, recalled. Effectively, this freezes aid operations credited with saving tens of millions of lives. But a U.S. federal judge has delayed another White House bid to slash the federal workforce, a so-called buyout offer that was set to expire tonight.
We encourage federal workers in this city to accept the very generous offer. If they don't want to show up to the office, if they want to rip the American people off, then they're welcome to take this buyout.
And tens of thousands have already taken the offer, according to the White House, which promises to pay them until October. But unions argue that isn't guaranteed, and protesters yesterday accused the White House of violating laws. A judge has blocked the buyout order until next Monday as he considers legal challenges. So Paul Hunter has been listening in, joins us once more from Washington. Paul, spearheading the White House effort to slash the federal workforce and end the programs is, of course, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, and it seems like he's facing some resistance now.
Yeah, look, to many people, Adrian, it all boils down to this notion that nobody elected Elon Musk, right? Trump backers will underline all Musk is doing is carrying out the kind of things that Trump campaigned on, not least deep cuts to the federal government and upending Washington as we know it, drain the swamp. That said, the pushback on Musk is real. His access to some of the Treasury Department's internal systems, for example, have already brought lawsuits based on his team being able to see the private information of American citizens. Effectively, they're saying, who is this guy? He has no right to see that stuff. Another part of the issue is opaqueness. Musk is the face of it all, but very little is known of the team at DOGE working with him. One of his staffers was found to have once put forward racist social media posts, for example. He's now resigned, but it underlines the concern, who are DOGE and what are they up to with the access they've been given? Last night, the U.S. Treasury agreed to limit Musk and his team's access to the payment system, while a judge hears the legal arguments in a suit brought by employee unions. It's fast-moving, Adrian, and a lot of people, including lawmakers, are freaking out.
Yeah, so much going on. All right, Paul Hunter in Washington, thanks. Elon Musk is also vowing to upgrade U.S. air traffic control systems, sparking concern among some lawmakers. This after that deadly mid-air collision between a commercial jet and a U.S. Army helicopter last week. Katie Nicholson now on what we've learned about the moments before impact.
Under a gloomy sky, crews secure the last of the wreckage from the Potomac. It's been 1 week since a passenger jet and military chopper collided over Washington's packed airspace. In an instant, 67 lives lost. After a morning briefing, Senator Ted Cruz told reporters one of the Black Hawk's key safety systems was apparently turned off.
This was a training mission, so there was no compelling national security reason for ADS-B to be turned off.
Officials also believe the chopper's pilots were wearing night vision goggles. The NTSB's final report is nowhere near complete, but in the information vacuum, concerns have been renewed about America's air traffic control systems. Elon Musk promising his DOGE team, handling government efficiency, will aim to make rapid safety upgrades to the air traffic control system. It's not a new problem. A blistering 2023 safety report noted that many FAA systems are so old it is no longer able to obtain spare parts for them. But the idea of Musk modernizing the system is proving controversial.
I have significant concerns about Elon Musk and his 27-year-old hackers digging into the air traffic control system.
There are strict standards for aviation systems set by the International Civil Aviation Organization. Changes to those complex systems, says this professor, are not something you can rush.
Regulatory systems are in place in order to ensure that nothing is integrated into aviation until it has been validated and there's evidence to show that it can be done so safely.
For now, the FAA has banned helicopters from flying over the Potomac near DCA until the end of March, a notification that went out through another of its aging systems that crashed over the weekend. A short bid to make these skies more safe. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Tonight, we can show you that undocumented migrants rounded up in the U.S. are being held at Guantanamo Bay. The Defense Department has released this video shot Tuesday of the first 10 prisoners arriving at the U.S. naval base in Cuba. The White House says they're part of a Venezuelan criminal gang, but no specific charges are mentioned. Critics say these deportations may be illegal and jeopardize access to legal representation. Well, Trump's tariff threats continue to demand political attention at all levels of government here. The Prime Minister is speaking with premiers yesterday and big city mayors today to map out a plan for what's next. Kate McKenna with their united approach.
The Prime Minister says Canada will be resilient as it stares down Donald Trump's tariff threat.
We're doing more than just bracing ourselves. We're convening provincial and territorial leaders.
He spoke to mayors from across Canada who say they also play an important role on Team Canada.
You know, this is an economic relationship that is the envy of the world. And to try to take a step back to dismantle that or do damage to it, I think the rest of the world could be just sitting back and laughing at us.
The conversation is shifting to how Canada can become less reliant on the States, including an openness for a new pipeline to carry Alberta crude to Eastern Canada.
I would expect that the Prime Minister and the premiers of the provinces and territories will be reflecting on all of this. I think it is only a responsible thing to do. That doesn't mean the federal government is supporting the building of a pipeline.
The government won a 30-day tariff reprieve by promising to crack down on migrants and drugs illegally crossing the border, including a proposal to appoint a fentanyl czar sometime soon. There's no job description yet.
I see this person as a person building relationships with the United States, a person building relationships with Mexico.
The fentanyl czar's role will be to help us integrate what is a whole of society challenge.
But some, including NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, question whether this is really about the border.
What Trump, though, is really about, and it is very clear, he is about making Canada the 51st state. That is what he is about. He has made that very clear. We don't need to guess about what his intentions are. He has repeated it.
The premiers are set to travel to Washington next week, where they'll meet with lawmakers as part of an ongoing Canadian lobby mission to convince Americans tariffs are a bad idea. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
So Rosie and the At Issue crew will be here in about 15 minutes to dig deeper into Trump's tariff threats, how Canada is responding, and what it could all mean for the upcoming federal election. Well, police in Abbotsford, BC, have accused a daycare owner of assaulting young children in her care.
On February 4th, our major crime detectives, they arrested the daycare owner, who is 60-year-old Indu Takar. Mrs. Takar has since been released from custody, pending her next court appearance.
The alleged incidents date back to 2022, involving children between 2 and 6 years old. Well, several U.S. cattle herds have tested positive for a new strain of bird flu never before seen in cows. The variant has been associated with some severe infections in humans, including one Canadian case. Alexander Silberman explains the risk.
Canadian dairy farms are ramping up surveillance after a new strain of bird flu was found in U.S. cattle.
We shouldn't panic. We have to watch out and try to keep birds away from the cattle and away from the feed. They're testing the animals coming in, testing milk.
The H5N1 virus has sickened dozens of people and millions of birds in the United States. But there's new concern after dairy cattle in Nevada were infected. Officials reporting milk samples detected the D1.1 variant of the virus.
Once it is in our dairy herds, it can cause significant amounts of damage.
In the U.S., the virus is reducing milk production and sending egg prices skyrocketing. So valuable that thieves stole 100,000 eggs in a Pennsylvania heist. A threat to food security, but also a concern for public health.
What's a bit unnerving is there's been a couple of cases, one in Canada and another in the United States, where it's not entirely clear what the source of infection was.
The D1.1 strain is the same version that landed a BC teenager in intensive care in November, the first human case of this variant caught in Canada. Health officials still don't know how she caught it, and in Louisiana, a man died after contracting the same strain.
We are now seeing multiple spillovers occurring in those dairy cattle.
This virologist says the risk is currently low to people who don't work with birds, but warns the illness could eventually spread between humans.
That is a potential pandemic in the making. And then the clock is really ticking to contain that initial cluster of cases before it can spread outward into the human population.
Infectious disease doctors say continuing milk testing is critical to stop any cases from spreading to humans. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to a CBC Marketplace investigation. Everyone loves a great deal, but sales might not always be what they seem. Asha Tomlinson looked into clothing retailer Old Navy, tracking prices for months.
You just came out of Old Navy. Did you get some deals?
Everything was on clearance and on sale, so I hope I got a good deal.
I found a bunch of good deals, actually.
Old Navy is well known for its sales. Just walk in and you see the signs everywhere. But we want to know, are they really what they seem? Or are you being tricked into thinking these are true discounts? We tested it out, ordering 10 products from Old Navy's website, and we tracked the prices for 7 months to see just how often they're on sale. Turns out, all 10 of the items we bought were on sale more than half of the time we tracked. The most dubious deal we found was this men's t-shirt, on sale the entire 7 months we checked.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's terrible.
Like, is a deal really a deal if it's on all the time?
So it's not really a sale.
There's also this suspect sale, a lady's shirt going for $19.99 with a countdown clock. But when time's up, the price dropped even lower to $15.99.
Retailers should be fair and accurate in their representations that they make to consumers.
Justin Giovanetti is a class action lawyer based in Vancouver. He's filed a suit against Old Navy.
Old Navy represents that their products are being sold at a discount, but in reality, we allege that that actually is not a discount price, because that's the price at which these products are always or almost always sold. So consumers are thinking that they're purchasing products that have a lot more value than they actually do. Our objective is to advance consumer rights.
Giovanetti's case hasn't been proven in court, and his class action still needs to be certified. As for Old Navy, we shared our findings with its parent company, Gap Inc. The response? No comment. Asha Tomlinson, CBC News, Toronto.
You can watch Asher's full investigation tomorrow on Marketplace. That's at 8 p.m. on CBC Television, 8:30 in Newfoundland, or stream it on CBC Gem. Well, a growing number of Canadian libraries are being pressured to pull books about sex ed from their shelves.
Children don't need that. Children need to be children.
The Fifth Estate investigation into the battle over book bans. Plus, some Canadian companies are already facing tariffs in spite of Trump's decision to pause a larger trade war.
I think our sales are going to drop probably by, 30-40%. It'll be significant.
And a daughter remembered through a new solo album.
We just want people to listen to her music and play it.
We're back in 2. The attempts to remove books on sex education and gender identity themes from public access in Canada have skyrocketed. And a new investigation from the Fifth Estate finds a shadow war on libraries. Mark Kelly has more on the battle over books, bans, and the freedom to read.
The Airdrie Public Library, just north of Calgary, finds itself caught in the crosshairs of a culture war targeting libraries across Canada and the U.S. Under fire? Books about sex education, gender identity, or titles with gay themes and characters, like this one.
It just teaches kids about Pride Festival and what happens at them. So this one, along with quite a few other titles we've had, were found actually in our toilet in the women's washroom.
Kelly Lawson has been tracking which library books have been drawing fire, and there are plenty. In 2023, there were 4 times more book challenges in Canada than the pre-pandemic average.
You have that right to choose for your children what they view. It's not your responsibility or right to choose for other people.
Who here feels that horrible things are happening in our libraries?
David Parker is the founder of the grassroots movement Take Back Alberta, which aims in part to change the face of the province, one book at a time, one library at a time.
What are the horrible things, in your opinion, that are going on in the libraries?
Well, they're introducing them to a sexual identity, right? They're introducing them to a sexual way of being. They're making sex primary. Children don't need that. Children need to be children.
Calls for crackdowns on libraries have been answered across the country, with protests and counter-protests. Libraries have faced legal threats and bomb threats. Do you think these attacks on books and libraries is the message that LGBTQ and trans folks don't belong in this country?
Absolutely. It's really kind of a first step towards a broader redefinition of who is truly part of Canada.
So, Mark, this particular backlash against libraries and books certainly seems to feel like an American import, no?
Oh, absolutely. And it started in the United States. It's spreading to Canada thanks to social media. What's interesting is that many of the books that parents want banned are the same on both sides of the border. What's different in the U.S. is there's been legislation introduced in many states that's very punitive towards libraries. In Idaho, for example, a parent can sue a library if they carry a book that the parents feel are inappropriate for kids. Books about, quote, homosexuality, for example. And what's also seen in the States is librarians are retiring in droves under this pressure. We'll be watching to see if that happens here in Canada as well.
Absolutely. Mark, thank you.
Thanks.
So Mark is the co-host of The Fifth Estate, and you can watch their full investigation Friday on CBC TV and CBC Gem at 9:30 in Newfoundland or on YouTube. Well, American shoppers getting shipments from Canada may soon get a surprise taste of Donald Trump's tariffs.
Those parcels are going to get to those U.S. customers, and there's going to be additional tax.
Why some Canadian products aren't getting that 30-day reprieve. After the break, Rosie's here with that issue. Hey, Rosie.
Hey, Adrian. Tonight we are, of course, going to talk about Trump's pause on tariffs.
Our work does not take proposed tariffs completely off the table.
What comes next in this fight, and how is Ottawa preparing for round two? Chantal, Althea, and Andrew join me to talk about that and more.
What should people expect to see and understand about Sunday's performance?
Storytelling.
Okay, so that's Kendrick Lamar teasing his Super Bowl halftime show, saying he's happy hip-hop will get the stage it deserves. He is still riding high from winning 5 Grammys this week, taking Record of the Year for his hit Not Like Us. The now famous Drake diss track is most likely on the set list for this Sunday. Well, some Canadian companies are grappling tonight with a new U.S. trade measure aimed at China. They fear it will make the products they ship to American customers more expensive. As Anise Haydari shows us, it's all about what's in those products.
This underwear is sold by Canadians and shipped from Canada, but they're still subject to a new U.S. tariff. Because they contain material from China, it means sticker shock for Americans.
Those parcels are going to get to those U.S. customers, and there's going to be additional tax that they're going to have to pay that they may not have been aware of.
That additional tax is because the Trump administration didn't just tariff China, it got rid of something called the de minimis exception. Businesses could avoid duties on shipments from China or things made in China but shipped from Canada if they were worth less than $800. Now, U.S. customers of Canadian companies have to pay if what they buy includes Chinese materials. This Montreal pantyhose maker laying off staff, in part because it relied on that exemption. 85% of its sales are to the U.S.
This is an incredibly difficult decision to make. You're affecting people's jobs, people's livelihoods. You're adding uncertainty into their lives.
And the party could be over for U.S. consumers who love cheap orders from retailers like Temu or Shein.
Virtually all of those shipments come in on a de minimis basis. No duties are paid, no taxes are collected. And so if you're a U.S. retailer, you're probably not thrilled about that.
Some U.S. companies may welcome this change because it makes Chinese competition more expensive.
It's
underwear made from trees.
Underwear made from trees, kind of like bamboo, right? Feel the waistbands, like feel the fabric. It is crazy how soft they are.
But these Canadian businesses aren't as keen, especially if the delayed tariffs on Canada make things even worse.
If that Canadian 25% tariff comes into play, though, I think our sales are going to drop probably by 30-40%. It'll be significant.
He's hoping any taxes on this underwear are brief. Anise Haydari, CBC News, Calgary.
All right, so time now to dig deeper into the news shaping our world. And tonight, Rosie's here with that issue.
At issue tonight, tariff reprieve. Donald Trump delays his trade war with Canada after speaking with Justin Trudeau. In exchange, the Prime Minister promises more border measures, including a fentanyl czar.
So this is positive, and it is progress. But at the same time, our work does not take proposed tariffs completely off the table. We will be engaging closely with the U.S. administration to underscore why tariffs hurt us all.
So how should Ottawa prepare for what might happen in less than 1 month? How should Canada take on the U.S. president? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it all down tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj. Been wanting to talk to you guys since Saturday and then again on Monday, and here we are finally. There's a lot happening. I'm going to start with you tonight, Althea. What do you think of where we are now as we wait for what might come and what the government needs to be doing during this time?
Well, I don't actually think that much has changed from Saturday. The question really is, what are the goalposts? What can Canada offer Donald Trump in terms of an exit ramp? The purported reasons for the tariffs, which was the fentanyl crisis, that's what was written in the White House executive order, is where they managed to give Donald Trump a win on Monday. But what the standard for success is, I think remains unclear. The premiers were told on that call on Saturday that Howard Lubnick, the incoming Commerce Secretary, had told Dominic LeBlanc, the finance minister now, that if American deaths dropped, then the tariffs would drop. But what is the rate of success to avoid more tariffs in 30 days? That is still unclear. And the things that the government has pledged to do are things that actually take normally 30 days to set up, even longer, like all these working groups between government agencies and departments and the provinces and the territories. It's not even clear what this fentanyl czar is going to do. We're supposed to find that out tomorrow. So there's a lot of unknowns. The government actually thinks that this is not about the fentanyl crisis, that it is really about extorting financial means, attracting investment, more jobs in the United States, and a money grab tool. And so their strategy hasn't changed, which is just trying to make the case that the Americans will feel a lot more pain if they pursue the strategy going forward.
So given that they don't believe that, I'm not sure anyone believes it's really about fentanyl, and that there's this moving target, Chantal, how on earth do you, as a government, prepare for or try to prevent a tariff from going into place a month from now?
You do what you can. I think it's clear it's not about fentanyl. I'm looking at the April 1st deadline for reports on trade, and the government fully expects this to become about trade. But you cannot negotiate in the absence of a counterparty that tells you what the end game is. Yeah. I'm also not noticing, because it's become a pattern, that things happen on one day and then they get corrected or changed for a few days. That exit ramp for Donald Trump was always there, the border and fentanyl, and it got used. But it got used because the reality of what tariffs mean to a number of industries suddenly did not go down well in the U.S. The same thing happened with the Gaza. Let's build hotels and make it a nice place to go for tourism. So you can do what you are doing, but you cannot really map out a real strategy, except to work on things that Canadians can improve among themselves. And there are pluses here. I have never seen people go in grocery stores and be as mindful of what they're buying. Something happened in Canada this week. It's not going to go away. It doesn't solve the tariff issue, but it certainly sends a really strong message that Canadians are paying attention.
Andrew?
Well, to echo this point about the chaos in Washington, we've heard 5 different rationales for this. You hear different things from different people around in Trump's circle. Trump himself, is epitome of mercurial, to say the least. And that would make it very difficult for anybody. It's hard to know what's on his mind, if anything's on his mind, except the will to power, the desire to dominate, which I think is more than policy, is really what drives Trump on a lot of fronts. I wouldn't say that about anybody else in political leadership, but it's pretty clearly that's a very important thing for him. So that bedevils things. I will say, if you want to know who's had a good week politically, I'm not usually the person who focuses on the politics of these things, but I think Justin Trudeau had a pretty good week. He gave a speech that was very well received on the night of the event. He brought in appropriately tough measures with the promise of more to come if they didn't get satisfaction. In the end, he got a deal with Trump to postpone it in exchange for basically 6 magic beans. And if you look at the polls, suddenly we're in a horse race. We've got a raft of polls now showing basically the Tories dropping at about 2 points a day. Latest poll has a gap of 13 points. It was 26 points, said all the polls 3 weeks ago. Yeah. So that adds interesting dynamics to all this. The Prime Minister looked prime ministerial for once.
And we'll talk about the Conservatives after the break to see how they're adjusting their strategy or how that might be changing the landscape. Chantal?
I think the Liberals have lucked into, and I'm not predicting an election outcome, but sure. the kind of perfect trifecta. The Prime Minister is leaving, and no one is saying, despite that he's had a good week, that he should reconsider and stay. Yeah. But the leadership campaign features candidates, the leading candidates, Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland, who fit the bill of what voters are looking for. Mm-hmm. People who are offering themselves to manage the Canada-US relationship. At the same time, and that's why I'm saying they really lucked in, most cabinet ministers that were in important portfolio have stayed on. Yes. So you don't get this impression of improvisation because they're all running for the leadership. Yeah. The 2 main characters are not in cabinet. Yeah. So, and I will give credit to both Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland. Neither of them is going around saying, if I were Justin Trudeau today, I would second guess him and do this and that.
Chrystia Freeland was doing that up until this actually happened on Sunday. She was right behind the government approach. And that is sort of, you know, Althea, speaking to what Chantal also said about the way Canadians are rallying, kind of the best tool that everyone has, right? Just try and stay united in terms of how this is going to unfold.
Okay, there's so many things here. Yeah. First of all, there were some people who saw the Saturday night speech and thought, see, Justin Trudeau's really good in a moment of crisis, and those were some of the Liberal backbenchers who supported him, who told their colleagues, hey, maybe we should stay with this guy after all. But to Chantal's point, I don't think anybody in the actual country is thinking that.
In the real world.
Okay, putting that aside,
yes.
What happened over the weekend, and this is the thing that is to Justin Trudeau's strength, is the rallying everyone together, just like he did in the early days of COVID. This plays to his strength, and we saw that not only does it play to his strength, but it countered the Conservative message that we have been hearing for the last 2 years, which is that Canada is broken. Mm-hmm. When you have everybody united against a common enemy, which is Donald Trump down south, who is actually saying and musing aloud about economically pressuring Canada to become the 51st U.S. state, you have the sense across the political spectrum that actually Canada is not broken. Canada is a beautiful country that we should all work together to save. And yes, we have problems, but we can make them better. And we're all united into this common project. And that is why, and I know we're going to talk about the Conservatives, but that has been, I think, the key challenge and why we've seen the Conservative leader tried to pivot. We've seen 2 versions of a different message.
Don't say too much now.
In the last few days. Yeah, sorry, but it has been a monumental land shift that we've seen in the last week.
Last quick word to you, Andrew.
Just 2 things. First, Althea said it plays to a strength. I might say it compensates for a weakness. He tends to be over-dramatic most times. This was actually a dramatic moment. The tone actually met the occasion. The other thing is we have a short-term and a long-term thing. The short-term thing is, okay, what kind of tariffs do we put on? How much do we try to mollify Trump? But the longer-term objective and the issue is going to be, if the tariffs are here to stay, what kind of adjustments do we have to make if we're now confronted with a very different neighbor to our south than we ever anticipated we face? We have much larger issues to confront than just that.
Okay, and as we hinted about, we're going to leave this part here, and when we come back, we'll look at how this is challenging the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre in particular, and his messaging from the president.
Whether or not we agree with him should not matter. It should not take a foreign leader to get the Liberals to wake up to the drug crisis.
So what does this change for the Conservatives? Or how are they pivoting? That's next. At issue, Conservative strategy. With the threat of tariffs taking center stage, Pierre Poilievre is changing parts of his pitch to Canadians.
We will have a prime minister that seals the border, protects our people, and puts Canada first. And most of all, we are going to put our country first, electing a common-sense Conservative government that will put Canada first.
Here to break down some of Poilievre's messaging and the shift there, Chantal, Andrew, and Althea. Chantal, why don't you start us off? Obviously, a pivot is needed. I know that there is a conversation inside the Conservative Party about how big a pivot, and we started to see that from Pierre Poilievre on Sunday, and then again around the issue of fentanyl and mandatory minimums. What does this tell you about what concerns they might have about where things are headed?
But that they're still struggling. If it's a pivot, it's not really totally well done, and I can understand why. Yeah. For one, it doesn't really work to accept Donald Trump's terms, fentanyl and the border, to say if only, because nobody, as we said previously, actually believes that these are real reasons. For two, there are scores of industries that are really worried in this country, the auto industry, and I could name 5 or 6 more about what's going to happen to them. And none of the speech about we're going to prosecute fentanyl pushers forever is addressing these concerns. So Mr. Poilievre is still trying to fit himself into the frame of this discussion. And why he's struggling, I believe, is that it is impossible to do that while blaming the people who are fighting on the front line, including Justin Trudeau. Because you will look, if you're shooting at what the government of Canada is doing at this point, you will look like you're shooting in the back of your own soldiers. But there are not 60,000 things that Pierre Poilievre can put forward that will be very different from what the premiers and the prime minister cobbled together. So it is a tough spot, and the only way to do this would be to look prime ministerial, forget about shooting at everyone and saying, you know, I'm seizing the moment. I'm not sure that by this time this is going to happen.
Andrew.
It's a difficult time, I think, for any opposition leader in the middle of a national crisis like this, where you want to be critical, but you don't want to look disloyal or unsupportive. I think he's got an additional issue that a lot of his base does think that the issue is fentanyl and does think the issue is immigration and thinks Donald Trump's got a point, or thinks that we're being too critical of him and we should cut a deal. You know, so he's in a difficult spot that way. The second batch of issues is, you know, all the things he was going to run on, the carbon tax, Justin Trudeau have disappeared, and now he's suddenly in the middle of something which he hadn't planned for, hadn't gamed out, and that would be disorienting. Thirdly, his natural demeanor and tone is attack dog. It's not prime ministerial. This is a moment when, as Chantal said, it would be probably ripe to try to look a little more prime ministerial. Some of us have been suggesting that for some time, but particularly now. And the last point I'll make is, summing all that together, he hasn't looked good. Talking about suddenly saying we should send troops to the border, or suddenly come out and saying we should have life penalties for anybody who's peddling fentanyl. It's looked jittery. It's looked over the top. It has not looked calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah, Althea.
I agree with most of what Andrew said, actually. I do think we did see a pivot this week, though. On Sunday, the Conservative leader had a press conference, and I had to listen to it again because he actually said, I agree with him, like I agree with the Prime Minister, when he came out in support for retaliatory tariffs. And you saw on social media this backlash from Conservatives angry at Donald Trump, like they can almost taste the victories. It's just right there. They were weeks away from claiming the top prize, and then Donald Trump just threw all their plans in disarray. And what is happening, and Andrew touched on it, is that there is disagreement within like the big C, small c conservative tent. You have folks like Doug Ford in Ontario who believe you need to talk tough and make the case and fight Donald Trump and, you know, take the fight to him. And then you have other people like Nell Smith who believe, well, the president has a point, and we should fix the drug crisis in the country, and we should peg this on Justin Trudeau. And you have seen him pivot to the version that he is more comfortable with, which is everything is Justin Trudeau's fault, or now it's Mark Carney's fault, because apparently Mark Carney has been here for the last 9 years and is responsible for all the ills plaguing us too. So that has been very interesting. What it tells me, though, is that they're worried about their own members, because this is not a growth strategy. And so we'll see what we've seen a lot of rolling polls and see if the decline is even further in the days and weeks to come.
I know you want in, Chantal, but I did want to just say, like, the issue of like patriotism in the country, I think really does change a lot of the landscape for the Bloc Québécois too, and we can talk about that more another time. But it really does make it very difficult to go after the government on anything.
Well, you see a you see a poll on Bloomberg today that shows that the majority of Albertans believe, despite opposition from Nell Smith, the premier, that yes, we should, if it comes to that, use energy as a tool in a trade war. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it tells you a lot about how people feel. You see it in Quebec, where it's really amazing to watch people. You don't need to criticize Mark Carney's French. They're already defending it. And you have a poll today that shows that Mark Carney, well, one, that the Liberals are up in Quebec and doing better than they have in months. But if you put Mark Carney's name in there, then the Liberals are, 14, 16 points ahead of the Bloc Québécois.
Yeah, I mean,
but, you know,
I'm not saying... I'm not saying that's going to hold.
No,
I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But
this is where we're at. And when you talk about Doug Ford's approach versus Nell Smith, the last time I looked, it's easy for the Conservatives to win or keep Alberta, but they can't form government without winning Ontario.
That's right. Yeah, Andrew,
You would think, though, that patriotism would be a Conservative card they could play, especially against this Prime Minister, who has, you know, the perception certainly has been, has spent the last 9 years running down the country, refusing to fly the flag, et cetera. Maybe some of those criticisms are unfair, but I think that's definitely the reputation he's attracted. And so at a moment like this, you'd think a Conservative leader would be able to stand up, if only by example, and pluck at the heartstrings of the country.
Okay, I mean, it's kind of remarkable how much has changed since just last week when we saw you guys. Thank you for that. We'll see you soon, and I'll send things back now to Adrian in Toronto.
Hey, thanks, Rosie. Up next, a young BC artist now remembered through her music.
She's one of those people that seem to be good at everything.
The talented Nell Smith in our moment. This is Nell Smith, a late teenager from BC, seen by many as a musical prodigy, known by some for her work with Grammy Award-winning rock band The Flaming Lips. So months after Nell's tragic passing, her solo album is set for release this spring, and tonight the artistry that made Smith a standout makes our moment.
She's one of those people that seemed to be good at everything. When we went to the first performance, I can't remember how old she would have been, like 8 or 9 maybe. And I remember it finishing and Rachel and I looking at each other and going, she's got a really good voice actually.
She was really worried about people judging her and that this album wouldn't be liked. I think the thing that's so sad is that she's not going to get to see the positive reaction when this album actually comes out. Yeah, we got the test pressings a couple of weeks ago. Just left them. She just suddenly brought up too much for us. We couldn't listen to them. And then it was Icar, a 13-year-old son, who just sort of said, you know, can we listen to Nell's album? And so we put it on, and it was hard. It was really difficult to listen to.
We just want people to listen to her music and play it, and just keeping her alive in that way.
This is both so rough and so good. The label says that profits from Nell Smith's album sales will go towards a memorial fund established to help support young emerging artists. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.